Hello and welcome to the Al-Attiyah Foundation Podcast. My name is Naweed Jabakil. Today we're delighted to be joined by Miss Roberta Boscolo. Miss Boscolo is head of the Climate and Energy Unit at the World Meteorological Organization, in a role she's been in since 2015. Since 1950, the WMO, as a specialized agency within the United Nations system, has been providing data and analytical insights on global weather, water, climate, and environmental issues in support of global agreements and national policies. Ms. Boscolo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever. Thank you.
Wherever you are, we hope the weather is good wherever our listeners are as well. Let's start with that then. Just tell us a bit about yourself and your role as climate and energy lead at the WMO.
Sure. So I am a climate scientist at the World Meteorological Organization. WMO for short is basically a UN body and is the authoritative voice for weather, water, and climate. I lead the work on climate and energy within the WMO, which means I help bridge science with the real world and create value from the data and the science that we have and we produce and we collect to make sure that the energy systems can handle what variability in weather, water, and climate are impacting them in their operations and siting and infrastructure. So basically, in short, I turn the climate, weather, water, and climate data into something that is useful for the people and for make big decisions. In my case, for energy, in the overall WMO for any other sectors, health, agriculture, water management, disaster risk reduction, aviation, and marine, and many more.
And let's just look at some practical examples then. How does your work within the climate and energy program support the WMO's broader mandate in protecting the climate?
So WMO in WMO is the mandate of WMO is to make climate information actually useful for people, not just for scientists. Of course, important for scientists. We provide a lot of information, for example, to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, which provides all the update on the climate change. But specifically, it's very important that also we create, value for people. And in my team, in the climate energy team, we bring that science straight into the energy world. And we work with countries, companies, and we help them to understand how the weather and the climate affecting their, things like the wind, the solar, and the hydropower, or how to plan better for the future changes on the climate. It is about basically turning data into decisions to support the decision. And we also team up with partners like IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, to make sure that the climate science is part of this big energy conversation. And at the end of the day, we want an energy system that can handle the climate that we have and the one that is going to happen in the future.
So let's focus on the science then. The mandate essentially is to provide the facts and the science. Recently, in one of your speeches, you noted that sea levels have already risen by an average of approximately 50 centimeters compared with pre-industrial levels. Are we confronting a silent yet essentially existential dangerous threat here?
So sea level rise is one of those threats that creeps up, on us, and it is slow, it's quiet, and because it doesn't really get too much attention, people often are not aware or they tune out. Um, but the science is, as you said, is very clear. We have been talking about this for years, and I recently saw that an article that just was published and said that at the end of this century, if we continue with policies as usual, we will have even more like 64 or actually 73 centimeters at the end of the century. But sometimes, and this is what I'm realizing, is that information alone doesn't always move people. And if you see the street floodings, if you see the coastline disappearing, then people feel like this is also a problem. But if they don't see them, and they just don't see these changes, people tends not to take attention, to pay attention to this. So I think that we are facing not just a physical threat, but also, I would say, a communication problem, a communication threat. And we tend to normalize these risks, but yet the sea level rise is already in some areas reshaping lives, especially for those living in coastal and islands community. So this is important that we keep communicate, and we keep to have a narrative that really makes people feel the threats, not just
Yeah.
mentally, but also with conscience and with the heart.
I want to stick with that because your background, you have an MSc in physical oceanography, and I think with the climate debate, so often we hear about emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and looking up to the skies. But 70% of the world of the Earth is water, essentially. Most of that in the seas. Just how important is it to be thinking about protecting water and sea as well when it comes to this wider debate on climate change?
Well, first of all, we need to know that the 90% of the excess of heat that these greenhouse gases trap in the atmosphere are absorbed by the ocean. The ocean is becoming warmer, and this is impacting heat waves, for example, and ecosystem in the ocean, as well as the ocean is expanding, and this is one of the problem of sea level rise. This is why the sea level rise, the sea is rising also because of this expansion of this big body of water that, as you said, is 70% of the surface of our Earth. So is also changing some of the currents, is also changing some of the ecosystem, coral reefs, for example. We know that this coral reefs bleaching, and because of the high temperature, is becoming like a non-reversal process. So is extremely important, considering also that warmer seas are impacting the hurricanes and the storms. The storms, the hurricanes, especially now, like we saw recently, the Melissa hurricane that just hit it landfall in Jamaica. It was category 5. It was getting a lot of energy from the ocean because that part of the ocean was 3 degrees warmer than the average. So the ocean actually are a key element of the climate system. And as you said, emissions, temperature, and oceans are one of these feedback that we really need to look closely.
Yeah, and I think one interesting aspect, and judging by recent COPs conferences as well, is so much emphasis you hear from island nations, smaller nations, that they're more vulnerable. But if you look at more developed parts of the world or bigger nations, often people tend to live in coastal areas as well, big cities and others, trade and commerce. So I think the threat perhaps not really being fully understood in other regions as well. But let's move on towards that multilateral system, if we may. Obviously, the message of the WMO, as we've been hearing, is science and facts lead the way. We've seen a lot of geopolitical volatility around the whole climate change debate. The United States under President Trump once again saying that it's not something that they're too keen on. What impact do you think that's going to have on this effort moving forward that you've dedicated your career to, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, I don't think the momentum is gone. Probably is a little bit shifted in terms because of this current geopolitics. There is a little bit is harder to get the message across, as you said. And it's a kind of a bit chaotic at the moment. But if you look closer, I mean, the transition, the energy transition, for example, hasn't stopped and is evolving. Actually, it is accelerating. The clean energy keeps breaking records. Investment are growing. Technology is moving faster. So, is also something that we start to do at the UN is kind of changing the narrative, because it is not just about saving the planet as before. It's not just an environmental solution, put in this way, but it's also about building resilience, jobs, and also increase the security. So the drive towards, I think, the green initiative hasn't really faded, but is becoming smarter and more grounded, is just making the case that a good, healthy planet is also good for business, and this is what is happening and what we are seeing right now.
And coming back to your work, the water, energy, food nexus is something that's talked about a lot in recent times, and the social impact, essentially, of energy, looking at regions of like Africa, Southeast Asia, South America, and Pacific, which your team has looked into. Even here in the Middle East, where we're based, that water, energy, food nexus, looking at long-term food security is a strategic priority for many nations around the world. Can you give us examples of how the WMO, your team, and the climate services have supported resilience in these sorts of places?
Yeah, thank you. And also, I think I want to say that this is actually the one of the part of my work that I love most, which is seeing how the climate science actually helps people on the ground. We have several projects, like one project was a Focus Africa project, for instance, that is funded by the European Commission, and we work with partners across 8 countries in Africa, and we bring tailored climate services to sectors like energy, agriculture, and water. And for example, there are places that they really heavily rely on hydropower, and we help them, the operators, to use seasonal forecasts to plan water storage during a period of drought, which means also for them fewer power cuts, smarter use of the resources. We also have another project I was involved in another project in South America. It's called Enandes, and this is a project that is funded by the Adaptation Fund. And we are also doing a similar things there, really helping the communities in Andes to manage energy and water risk that comes from, for example, for extreme weather events. And both projects is how we can bring, as again, the science, the data, and also we match them with the local knowledge together, because those people, indigenous people and communities, they also have their own knowledge and their way of predicting the weather through changes that they see in the environment, in the sky, in the clouds. So we try to bring all of this together, for them to boost resilience and to really make climate action tangible for the people. And this is what we do, and this is, as I said, the most exciting things that I do in my job.
And looking at your personal affinity, I understand towards this issue and the rising sea levels. You're from a town close to arguably the world's most famous city when it comes to water, Venice, and the Venetian lagoon. That's at risk of disappearing in the coming years if sea levels continue. We've seen the Italian government try to instill measures when it comes to the types of vessels that are allowed in. And what do you think is going to move the needle here? And in particular, I'm trying to understand from a technological perspective, what excites you most looking ahead as a potential solution in this space?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I grew up in a small island called Chioggia in the Venice Lagoon. It's a beautiful place. It's like a little Venice, but also, as you said, very fragile because every high tide now feels like a bit higher and the one before, and this is a reminder really of what is at stake. The disappearing of these islands. Um, and so when people ask me, what is in terms of local, at the local level, we need to protect these islands, and we have constructed barriers that stop the high tide. Although this barrier eventually, as we were discussing before about the sea level, will become obsolete. And the real solution is, try to reduce the greenhouse emissions. And when we talk about this, there is no one hero technology. It's really about a smart mix. There is no one silver bullet. There is an optimization of different technology that we have and we are using now, is just making them at scale. We have solar and wind. They are leading the way for decarbonizing the energy system, hydropower, geothermal, ocean energy, when it comes to make this system more stable and local. The challenge for the energy is the intermittency, but we have also innovation there to make the difference. We have batteries, for example, for energy storage that can help to store the energy, the surplus of energy when we have a lot of wind, a lot of solars, and provide the supply when these sources are not there because of low solar radiation or low wind. And also, I would say, very important, there is this digital intelligence that is coming out, that we can better forecast the weather, anticipate the demand, and also helping to balance the grid in real time. If I have to think about at one solution or one technology that is very groundbreaking and we can and can be very helpful for us to manage this new energy system, a new, say, green transition economy, I would say, is the AI, the artificial intelligence, combined with the climate science, because it is really helping to integrate, for example, renewable, improve forecast, and also make, for example, our grids, our distribution of energy smarter and more reliable. So
Yeah,
it's
and I
kind
think
of a giving a brain to the energy.
And I think that's something that we hear a lot from the other parts of the energy industry as well. As well, if you look at exploration and production, the use of AI on rigs is really improving efficiency and safety for many firms that we've heard from. At least, let's look forward. I just wanted to go to a wider multilateral issue again. We saw recently plastic pollution. Obviously, has caught a lot of public attention when it comes to what's happening with the seas. In August, the UNEP, the Environment Programme, tried to move forward with a legally binding international agreement on terminating plastic pollution, Inc. 5.2, it's known as. That didn't go ahead. Do you think that these sorts of big agreements are going to be even more challenging going forward in the environment that we're in?
Yes, definitely. We are seeing some difficult in the negotiation, and some problem or delays in approval of landmarks agreement. You mentioned, for example, the plastic one, but I would mention also more recently the one from the International Maritime Organization, that we see that, for example,
around shipping,
the shipping, to reduce the emission of the shipping, also was delayed another year. This is how is in the world, and the world of negotiation, the world of multilateralism. I would say, okay, maybe it is not fast as we wish, but I would think that this is the only way that we can do it. So we need to insist. We need to have more communication, more cooperation, and more information in these cases also. And this is the way. In any case, I don't think that we need to change anything in the multilateralism. I think we need to continue to have this fora, these discussions, and eventually to come to agree on this important agreement, as even if they are not as fast as we would like to see it. So yes, I would say slow process, but still, the same path, and the same avenue for this discussion.
One school of thought essentially is that unless people understand the financial cost of the effects on the climate, then not much is going to change. If you look at wildfires in Europe, for example, or the ones we saw in California, which were devastating last year, that's going to be more frequent if we listen to what the predictions of science say. Has the WMO, your organization, conducted assessments to try and quantify the financial impacts of such events? When you look at the destruction of housing, insurance, etc., direct and indirect, and where do we stand with that?
So as you said, flooding, for example, is becoming one of the most frequent and most costly disaster that we are seeing worldwide. And as you said, it is not just weather; it is actually an economic disaster. And we at WMO have done a lot of work in trying to quantify this impact. We have a report that we produce every 5 years, and we call it the Atlas of Mortality and Economic Losses for Weather, Climate, and Water-Related Hazards. The last one was looking at the period of 1970 to 2021. And we report, for example, that there were 12,000 disasters over these 5 decades that caused 2 million deaths and $4 trillion in economic losses. And what we see is that early warnings, for example, do save lives, and we have seen a kind of decrease in the loss of lives. But In terms of financial losses, this is actually skyrocketing because we are becoming more and more exposed with our infrastructure to the change of climate, as you said, changing of climate and the changing in extreme events, frequent and intensity of extreme events. And this is also very important to work, as you said, with industries like insurance and financial sector. We have worked with, we raise awareness of climate change in specifically in the protection gap, meaning that more and more people and assets are becoming insurable, for example. And the insurance sector are using our data and our forecast for their pricing, for their premiums, and also using the premium as a tool for adaptation and mitigation. So reducing premiums, for example, if the houses are constructing in other sites that are less exposed, um, or making the houses less vulnerable. So it is a very good, for example, synergy of the climate science and the insurance as well. And we should do something also with the financial sector.
Yeah, and policymakers as well. I guess a lot of that planning going into things like housing, which is a major issue. Building affordable housing is a major issue for most governments around the world. So potentially policymakers need to use that as well. I'm conscious of the fact that we've spoken about a lot of threats, as the WMO puts it, and the extreme weather events. I wanted to finish on a more positive note, if we can. Looking at your personal experience and background, then what's on the horizon, do you think, and hope for when it comes to climate services and sustainability?
Yeah, so it goes back probably to where I grew up, and the beauty of these islands where we live and the threats that we have right now. So I think what's keep me going, is also the human side of the climate science. Is not just, as you said, information, is how to help really people to cope with this threat. Is a farmer using, for example, the forecast to protect their crops, energy planners using the data to keep the lights on, community that rebuild stronger after a disaster. So is this work that is less abstract, and it is more like helping humanity and helping people to cope with this disaster. And I think that for me, when I see that my science, the science that I work on, is bridging business, institution, people, is where I feel like rewarded for my work, and I think this is how where I see hope for the future.
And a positive note to end on, and it just got me thinking. A lot of people in their lives and careers talk about impact and doing meaningful work, but there's the weather. It really is something that touches and affects every single person on Earth potentially. So, a positive note to end on. Ms. Roberta Boscolo, thank you so much for joining us on behalf of the Al-Attiyah Foundation. We really appreciate your time today, providing our listeners with your valuable insights on your work, your projects, and the work of the WMO. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you soon.
Thank you very much, and it's been a real pleasure to have to share this conversation. And if I, just want to say one more message to our listener, just to say that climate change is a big challenge, but it is not a challenge that is not solvable. So we already have the science, we have the technology, and we have the creativity to build a safer and a cleaner future. So this is just to have the courage to act and the wisdom really to work together.
A positive note to end on then, Roberta. Thank you. The thoughts there of Roberta Boscolo from the World Meteorological Organization. That's all we have time for. On behalf of the Al-Attiyah Foundation, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and providing our listeners with your valuable insights on your work and the work of the WMO. The foundation really looks forward to continuing the conversation with you soon.